Emma Martinez stepped off the supply helicopter at Forward Operating Base Nightwatch, carrying what looked like a child's toy. The rifle slung across her shoulder was bright pink, decorated with Hello Kitty stickers, and bore a purple sling that sparkled in the harsh Afghan sun. Her civilian contractor badge swayed against desert camouflage that was 2 sizes too large, and her boots looked like they'd never seen a day of real combat. The soldiers watching from the landing zone didn't even try to hide their amusement. Staff Sergeant Derek Coleman nudged his buddy and pointed at the weapon, barely containing his laughter. Lieutenant Sarah Kim pulled out her phone immediately, snapping photos that would be all over social media within minutes. They had no idea they were looking at a woman who would save every single one of their lives before the sun set that day. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Forward Operating Base Nightwatch clung to the side of a barren mountain like a metal and concrete scar against the ancient landscape. Dust devils danced between the prefabricated buildings, carrying the scent of diesel fuel and human sweat across the compound. This wasn't some rear-echelon paradise with air conditioning and hot meals. This was the sharp end of the spear, where American forces maintained a precarious foothold in terrain that had swallowed armies for centuries. The base housed barely 200 souls, mostly infantry grunts and support personnel who counted days until rotation home on their helmet bands. Concrete barriers topped with razor wire formed concentric rings of defense, and the guard towers offered views of valleys where death could approach from any direction. Every building was designed for function over comfort, with steel plates welded over windows and sandbags stacked around doorways like protective altars. Emma's arrival had been unexpected, just another bureaucratic shuffle in the endless paperwork that governed military life. Her orders designated her as a civilian marksmanship instructor, sent to evaluate training protocols for the upcoming rotation. What those orders didn't explain was why anyone thought Forward Operating Base Nightwatch needed civilian oversight, especially from someone who looked like she'd gotten lost on her way to a paintball tournament. Staff Sergeant Derek Coleman had 15 years in the Army and combat tours that stretched from Iraq to Syria to Afghanistan. He'd earned his stripes the hard way, through firefights and roadside bombs, through watching friends go home in flag-draped boxes. His men respected him because he'd bled with them, sweated with them, and never asked them to do anything he wouldn't do himself. So when he saw Emma Martinez climbing out of that helicopter with her ridiculous weapon, his first instinct was protective skepticism. What the hell is that supposed to be? Coleman asked Corporal Jake Thompson, who was already filming with his phone. Thompson was 22, built like a scarecrow, and had the kind of nervous energy that made him document everything with digital obsession. His social media presence was legendary among the troops, and he'd already started composing captions. In his head. "Some kind of joke, I think," Thompson replied, zooming in on the pink rifle. "Maybe it's like, bring your daughter to work day or something." Lieutenant Sarah Kim approached with the confident stride of someone who'd graduated from West Point with honors and fully intended to make general before she turned 40. Her uniform was always pristine, her bearing perfect, and her tolerance for anything that didn't meet military standards was approximately 0. She took one look at Emma's setup and felt her jaw clench involuntarily. "Are we running a daycare now?" Kim muttered to nobody in particular. Her phone was already out, capturing video that she captioned, "When civilians think they understand combat," before posting it to her Instagram story. The likes started accumulating immediately from her network of military academy friends and fellow officers, who appreciated her no-nonsense approach to military professionalism. Emma seemed oblivious to the attention her arrival was generating. She methodically unloaded her gear from the helicopter, speaking quietly with the crew chief about pickup schedules and logistics. Her movements were economical and purposeful. But her appearance continued to draw stares and whispered comments from every soldier within visual range. Private Alex Rivera, a stocky kid from Phoenix who still wore his high school football championship ring, leaned against a concrete barrier and shook his head in disbelief. $20 says she can't hit the broad side of a building, he announced to anyone within earshot. I mean, look at that thing. My little sister has better tactical gear. The betting started immediately, as it always did when soldiers had nothing better to do than speculate about the newest source of entertainment. The odds were running heavily against Emma's competence, with most money wagering on how quickly she'd wash out or request transport back to whatever rear-echelon paradise had spawned her. Captain Michael Torres emerged from the command bunker with the weary expression of an officer who dealt with too many bureaucratic surprises over the past 6 months. Torres was a good commander, respected by his men and trusted by his superiors. But he'd learned to view unexpected arrivals with the same enthusiasm most people reserved for root canals. His experience suggested that anything arriving unannounced usually meant more paperwork, more complications, and more explanations to people who'd never set foot in a combat zone. Somebody want to explain to me why we've got what appears to be a child playing dress-up on my landing zone? Torres asked his assembled staff. His tone was carefully neutral, but his eyes conveyed the message that someone better have answers that made sense. Sergeant First Class David Chun, the senior enlisted man responsible for training coordination, consulted his tablet with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. Chun was methodical, thorough, and had never encountered a regulation he couldn't cite from memory. His confusion was evident as he scrolled through digital paperwork that offered more questions than answers. Orders came down from division, Chun reported. Civilian contractor, marksmanship evaluation, duration unspecified. Background check cleared, security clearance verified, but the specifics are pretty vague. Torres studied Emma from a distance, noting the careful way she handled her equipment and the professional manner in which she interacted with the helicopter crew. Something about her movements suggested competence despite her appearance, but he'd been fooled by first impressions before. Well, she's here now, Torres decided. Get her processed and figure out what she needs, but keep an eye on things. This place is dangerous enough without adding unnecessary complications. The processing station was a converted shipping container that served as the base's administrative center, where new arrivals surrendered their dignity along with their personal effects. Emma approached the desk with the same calm demeanor she'd maintained since arrival, seemingly unaware of the growing crowd of observers who'd gathered to witness what they expected would be an entertaining disaster. Corporal Thompson had positioned himself strategically to capture the best angles, his phone recording as Emma presented her identification and began filling out the mandatory paperwork. His running commentary was already gaining traction online, with viewers tuning in to watch what promised to be either spectacular failure or elaborate comedy. Okay, folks, we've got ourselves a situation here at Forward Nightwatch, Thompson narrated quietly to his phone. Civilian contractor just arrived with what appears to be a weapon designed by a 6-year-old girl. Taking bets now on how long before she accidentally shoots herself in the foot. The comment section exploded with speculation, jokes, and increasingly creative insults directed at Emma's appearance and equipment. Thompson's follower count was climbing as viewers shared the stream with friends who appreciated military humor and civilian mockery in equal measure. Emma completed her paperwork without acknowledging the digital audience that was documenting her every move. When asked about her weapon preference for the standard qualification course, she simply indicated her pink rifle and requested access to the range at the earliest opportunity. "Ma'am," said the clerk processing her forms, "are you sure about that weapon? We've got plenty of standard issue rifles available if you'd prefer something more conventional." Emma smiled politely and declined the offer. "This one will work just fine," she said. "I'm familiar with its capabilities." Staff Sergeant Coleman, who'd been observing from a respectful distance, stepped forward with the kind of helpful authority that barely concealed deep skepticism. Coleman had seen plenty of civilians who thought they understood military life because they'd watched too many movies or played too many video games. His approach was usually to let reality provide the education they needed. "Ma'am, with respect, this isn't a civilian range," Coleman explained. "We're dealing with combat conditions here. Wind, dust, elevation, stress factors you might not be used to. Maybe we should start with some basic orientation before we jump into live fire exercises." Emma nodded agreeably and thanked him for his concern. Her willingness to accept guidance seemed to confirm everyone's assumptions about her inexperience, and the crowd's confidence in their judgment solidified accordingly. Phones continued recording as she was escorted toward the temporary quarters that would house her during her stay. Lieutenant Kim intercepted the group halfway across the compound, her expression suggesting she'd appointed herself as the unofficial quality control officer for this unexpected situation. Kim's military bearing was impeccable, her confidence absolute, and her opinion of civilian contractors who showed up looking like they'd raided a toy store was predictably low. "Before we waste valuable range time and ammunition," Kim announced, "maybe our guest would like to demonstrate her familiarity with basic weapon safety. You know, fundamentals like which end the bullet comes out of." The gathered soldiers appreciated Kim's sarcasm, and several chuckled appreciatively at what they saw as appropriate skepticism. Emma accepted the suggestion without complaint, indicating that she'd be happy to demonstrate whatever procedures they considered necessary. The crowd followed them toward the improvised training area where new arrivals typically received their orientation briefings. This was usually a mundane administrative requirement, but Emma's presence had transformed routine procedure into spectator sport. Soldiers abandoned their duties to watch, sensing that they were about to witness something that would provide entertainment for weeks to come. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Thompson's live stream audience had grown to several hundred viewers, with comments flowing so fast he couldn't read them all. The consensus seemed to be that they were watching either elaborate performance art or the beginning of an epic disaster. Either way, nobody wanted to miss what happened next. Emma set her pink rifle on the wooden table that served as the demonstration platform, its bright color and decorative stickers creating a surreal contrast against the military environment. The weapon looked like something that belonged in a teenager's bedroom rather than a combat zone, and its appearance continued to generate amazement among observers who'd never seen anything quite like it. Staff Sergeant Coleman began his standard safety briefing, the same presentation he'd delivered hundreds of times to new recruits and replacement personnel. His tone was professional but deliberately simplified, the kind of voice adults used when explaining dangerous concepts to children who might not fully grasp the consequences of their actions. "All right, ma'am, let's start with the basics," Coleman announced, his voice carrying clearly across the gathered crowd. "This is a rifle. It's designed to fire projectiles at high velocity toward designated targets. The most important thing to remember is that we always treat every weapon as if it's loaded, even when we know it's not." Emma listened attentively, nodding at appropriate intervals and asking no questions. Her apparent willingness to receive basic instruction that any 12-year-old Boy Scout would have found insulting seemed to confirm every assumption about her level of competence. Coleman continued his presentation, explaining concepts like muzzle discipline, trigger control, and sight alignment with the patience of someone addressing a particularly slow kindergarten class. Behind him, soldiers exchanged glances and barely suppressed grins as they watched a grown woman receive instruction that most of them had mastered before they could legally drive. "Now, the pink color and decorations on your weapon," Coleman continued, while certainly unique, don't change the basic principles of marksmanship. You'll still need to account for wind, elevation, target movement, and environmental factors that can affect accuracy. Private Rivera couldn't resist adding his own commentary from the back of the crowd. Maybe she should worry about hitting the target before she worries about wind drift, he called out, generating another wave of laughter from his audience. Emma smiled good-naturedly at the comment, but said nothing in response. Her apparent acceptance of the ridicule seemed to encourage more of it, as soldiers began offering their own helpful suggestions about everything from weapon maintenance to basic breathing techniques. The demonstration continued for another 20 minutes, with Coleman covering topics that Emma could probably have taught in her sleep. Her patient attention to instruction, that was clearly beneath her actual skill level, began to take on an almost meditative quality, as if she was using the time to center herself for something more demanding. Corporal Townsend's stream had attracted over 1,000 viewers by now, with comments ranging from military humor to genuinely curious questions about who this woman was and why she'd been sent to a forward operating base with equipment that looked like it belonged in a toy store. The speculation was becoming increasingly creative as viewers tried to make sense of what they were witnessing. Finally, Coleman concluded his briefing and asked if Emma had any questions about the material they'd covered. She thanked him politely and indicated that she felt ready to proceed to live fire exercises whenever it was convenient for the range schedule. "Well," Coleman said, glancing around at his audience, "I guess we'll see what happens when theory meets reality. Range opens at 1400 hours. We'll start you off with some basic qualification courses and see how you handle the fundamentals." As the crowd began to disperse, soldiers were already making plans to witness what they expected would be either spectacular failure or elaborate comedy. The betting pools were expanding beyond simple success or failure to include categories like time until weapon malfunction, number of missed shots, and probability of requesting immediate transport home. Emma spent the remainder of the morning quietly preparing her equipment and reviewing the base layout with the methodical attention to detail that might have impressed observers if they'd been paying attention to anything other than her appearance. But their minds were already made up, their expectations set, and their entertainment scheduled for the afternoon range session. What none of them realized was that they were about to receive an education in the difference between appearance and capability, between assumptions and reality, between what things looked like and what they actually were. The pink rifle that had generated so much amusement was about to demonstrate why appearances could be not just deceiving, but dangerously misleading. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the western ridgeline when Emma made her way toward the firing range, her pink rifle slung casually across her shoulder. Behind her, nearly half the base population followed at a respectful distance, their phones ready and their expectations running toward spectacular entertainment. Nobody suspected that within the next few hours, that ridiculous pink weapon would save all their lives. The range at Forward Operating Base Nightwatch was nothing more than a cleared strip of earth backed by a natural hillside that served as a bullet trap. Sandbags marked firing positions at various distances, with targets ranging from 25 meters out to 300. The afternoon heat created shimmering waves that danced above the rocky ground, distorting distant objects and making accurate shooting a genuine challenge even for experienced marksmen. Emma arrived precisely at 1400 hours, her pink rifle case drawing immediate attention from the dozen soldiers who had gathered to witness what they expected would be an educational disaster. Staff Sergeant Coleman was already present, clipboard in hand, wearing the expression of someone preparing to document failure for official records. Lieutenant Kim had positioned herself near the scoring table, her phone strategically angled to capture what she anticipated would be footage worth sharing with her military academy network. The betting pools had grown throughout the morning, with odds heavily favoring spectacular failure and immediate Requests for transport back to whatever civilian paradise had spawned this apparent mistake. Corporal Thompson's live stream had attracted nearly 2,000 viewers, with comments flowing so rapidly that the text appeared as a blur of speculation, jokes, and increasingly creative predictions about the coming entertainment. His follower count was climbing steadily as word spread through military social media networks about the civilian contractor with the toy rifle. Emma began unpacking her equipment with the same methodical precision she displayed since arrival. The pink rifle emerged from its case like a neon beacon against the drab military environment, its Hello Kitty stickers catching the sunlight and creating small rainbows that danced across the nearby sandbags. The weapon's appearance continued to generate amazement among observers, who'd seen plenty of unusual things during their deployments, but nothing quite like this. Private Rivera had expanded his betting operation to include multiple categories of failure, taking wagers on everything from accuracy percentages to the likelihood of weapon malfunction. His entrepreneurial spirit was attracting customers from across the base, with soldiers placing bets during their off-duty time and requesting updates via text message from those unable to attend in person. Staff Sergeant Coleman consulted his clipboard and announced the initial qualification course with the formal tone he used for all official range activities. Standard qualification, 20 rounds, distances from 25 to 300 meters. Passing score is 30 out of 40 possible points. Time limit is 20 minutes including magazine changes. Emma nodded her understanding and began preparing her weapon with movements that were economical and practiced. She inserted a magazine with the smooth confidence of someone who'd performed the action thousands of times, though her audience interpreted her familiarity as either lucky, muscle memory, or dangerous overconfidence. "Ma'am," Coleman added, "just to clarify expectations, this isn't a game. These are combat standards designed to ensure soldiers can engage threats effectively under stress. If you're not comfortable with the requirements, we can arrange for additional training time." Emma thanked him for his concern and indicated that she was ready to proceed whenever the range was clear. Her calm acceptance of the challenge seemed to confirm everyone's assumptions about her overconfidence, and the crowd's anticipation reached fever pitch as they prepared to witness what promised to be either comedy or tragedy. Thompson adjusted his phone angle to capture the best view of the firing line, providing running commentary for his growing audience. "All right, folks, this is it. Our civilian contractor is about to discover why the military doesn't typically issue pink weapons. Taking final bets now on whether she hits anything at all." The comment section exploded with speculation and encouragement for maximum documentation of the expected failure. Viewers were sharing the stream with friends, creating a viral audience that extended far beyond the military community into civilian social media networks, where the novelty of the situation was generating widespread interest. Emma took her position at the 25-meter line, settling into a prone firing stance with the fluid grace of someone who'd spent considerable time in the position. Her movements were smooth and deliberate, though her audience attributed her apparent comfort to beginner's luck or recreational shooting experience that wouldn't translate to military standards. The pink rifle looked absurd against the combat environment, its bright color and decorative elements creating a surreal contrast that continued to generate amazement among professional soldiers who'd never seen anything quite like it. Several observers were taking photographs for their personal collections, anticipating stories they'd tell for years about the day a civilian showed up to a combat zone with a weapon that belonged in a toy store. Coleman raised his hand to signal the beginning of the qualification course, his voice carrying clearly across the range. "Shooter ready? Range is hot. You may commence firing when ready." Emma's first shock broke with the clean, crisp sound of a well-maintained weapon fired by someone who understood trigger control. The bullet struck the 25-meter target with a metallic ping that echoed across the range, followed immediately by a moment of silence as observers processed what they'd just witnessed. The shot had struck center mass, creating a clean hole in the target's scoring ring that would have earned full points on any military qualification course. The accuracy was impressive but not impossible, and the crowd's reaction was muted surprise, rather than genuine amazement. Perhaps she'd gotten lucky, or perhaps recreational shooting had prepared her better than expected. Emma's second shot followed within 3 seconds, striking the target less than an inch from the first hole. Her breathing was controlled, her position stable, and her follow-through smooth. The pink rifle was performing like a precision instrument. Despite its ridiculous appearance, though most observers attributed the accuracy to the relatively short distance and ideal shooting conditions. Private Rivera called out from behind the firing line, "Not bad for 25 meters. Let's see how she does when the distance gets real." His comment drew chuckles from several soldiers who agreed that close-range accuracy was significantly easier than longer shots that required genuine skill and experience. Thompson's stream audience was reacting with surprised approval, though many comments suggested that luck was playing a significant role in Emma's initial success. The betting pools were adjusting slightly as some gamblers hedged their positions, but the majority opinion remained that failure was inevitable once the challenge increased. Emma completed the 25-meter stage with perfect scores, placing all 5 rounds within the target's center ring with mechanical precision. Her performance was solid, but not extraordinary, the kind of shooting that suggested competence without indicating exceptional skill. The crowd's mood remained confident that reality would assert itself once the targets moved to more challenging distances. Coleman announced the transition to 50 meters, where wind and elevation changes began to affect bullet trajectory in ways that separated recreational shooters from those with genuine marksmanship training. Emma adjusted her position and sight settings with practiced efficiency, though her audience interpreted her movements as either good coaching or lucky guessing. The 50-meter stage began with the same crisp shot placement that had characterized her closer shooting. Emma's first round struck the target's center ring, followed immediately by 4 more shots that grouped within a 2-inch circle. Her performance was becoming noticeably consistent, though observers attributed her success to ideal conditions and the relatively forgiving nature of the shorter distances. Lieutenant Kim was recording everything from multiple angles, her phone, capturing footage that she was already editing mentally for maximum impact when shared with her professional network. The novelty of a civilian contractor outperforming expectations was interesting, but Kim remained confident that the longer distances would reveal the limitations of recreational training when confronted with military standards. The transition to 100 meters marked the point where atmospheric conditions began to significantly affect bullet trajectory. Wind gusts that were barely noticeable at closer ranges could push bullets several inches off target at this distance, requiring shooters to read environmental conditions and adjust their point of aim accordingly. Emma paused before beginning the 100-meter stage, studying the wind flags positioned along the range and observing the heat shimmer that indicated air movement patterns. Her attention to environmental factors suggested either good instruction or natural intuition, though most observers assumed she was simply stalling while gathering courage for the more difficult shots ahead. Her first shot at 100 meters struck the target's center ring with the same precision she demonstrated at closer ranges. The second shot landed within an inch of the first, followed by 3 more rounds that created a group smaller than most soldiers could achieve with standard military rifles and conventional ammunition. The crowd's confidence was beginning to show hairline cracks as Emma's performance remained consistently excellent despite the increasing difficulty. Conversations grew quieter, betting adjustments became more frequent, and several observers began studying her technique with genuine interest rather than simple entertainment seeking. Corporal Thompson's commentary reflected the growing uncertainty in his audience as viewers struggled to reconcile their expectations with the evidence their eyes were providing. "Okay, folks, I've got to admit this is more interesting than expected. Our civilian contractor is putting together some pretty decent shooting so far, though we're still waiting for the real challenges." The comments section reflected similar confusion, with viewers debating whether they were witnessing exceptional luck, hidden skill, or some combination of factors that was producing results nobody had anticipated. The viral nature of the stream was attracting viewers from outside the military community, creating an audience that lacked the professional context to fully appreciate what they were observing. Emma's transition to the 200-meter line marked the point where shooting became genuinely challenging, even for experienced military marksmen. At this distance, minor errors in technique became major problems. Environmental factors multiplied their effects, and the psychological pressure of public performance could cause even skilled shooters to struggle. The targets at 200 meters appeared significantly smaller through iron sights, requiring precise sight alignment and trigger control that separated competent shooters from those with exceptional training. Emma settled into her firing position with the same calm deliberation she'd shown throughout the course, though her audience remained convinced that this distance would finally reveal the limitations of civilian preparation. Her first shot at 200 meters struck the target's center ring with a satisfying metallic ping that carried clearly across the range. The accuracy was impressive, but not impossible, and several soldiers nodded appreciatively at what appeared to be either excellent coaching or natural talent finally reaching its limits under increased pressure. Emma's second shot landed directly adjacent to the first, creating a group that would have earned maximum points on any military qualification standard. Her third shot overlapped the first two, producing a cluster that was drawing genuine attention from observers who were beginning to recognize that they might be witnessing something more significant than recreational competence. The fourth and fifth shots completed a group at 200 meters that was smaller than most soldiers could achieve with unlimited time and ideal conditions. Emma's performance was transitioning from surprisingly competent to genuinely impressive, though most observers remained convinced that the longest distance would finally provide the reality check they'd been expecting. Staff Sergeant Coleman was studying the targets through binoculars, his expression showing the first signs of genuine puzzlement as he processed results that didn't match his initial assessment of Emma's capabilities. His 15 years of military experience included training hundreds of soldiers, and he'd rarely seen shooting this consistent from anyone, regardless of their background or equipment. Lieutenant Kim had stopped making sarcastic comments, focusing instead on documenting performance that was becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss as luck or favorable conditions. Her phone continued recording, but her commentary had shifted from mockery to surprised observation as Emma's competence became undeniable. The 300-meter line represented the culmination of the standard qualification course, the distance where environmental factors, equipment limitations, and shooter skill combined to separate exceptional marksmen from the merely competent. At this range, heat shimmer distorted targets, wind gusts affected bullet trajectory significantly, and the psychological pressure of public performance could cause even experienced shooters to struggle. Emma approached the final stage with the same methodical preparation she'd displayed throughout the course. She studied the wind flags more carefully, observed the heat patterns rising from the rocky ground, and adjusted her sight settings with the precision of someone who understood the relationship between environmental conditions and bullet performance. Private Rivera had stopped taking bets, his entrepreneurial confidence shaken by results that were exceeding every prediction his customers had made. The betting pools that had seemed like easy money were turning into expensive lessons about the dangers of assumptions based on appearances rather than demonstrated capability. Thompson's stream audience had grown to over 5,000 viewers as word spread through social media networks about the civilian contractor, who was systematically dismantling every stereotype about military competence and civilian inadequacy. Comments were flowing too rapidly to read, creating a blur of speculation, amazement, and increasingly creative theories about who this woman actually was. Emma's first shot at 300 meters struck the target with the same precision she'd demonstrated throughout the qualification course. The bullet hole appeared in the target's center ring as if placed there by divine intervention, creating a moment of stunned silence among observers who were running out of rational explanations for what they were witnessing. Her second shot landed within a finger's width of the first, followed by 3 more rounds that created a group at 300 meters that most soldiers would have been proud to achieve at half the distance. Emma's performance had transcended surprising competence and entered the realm of genuine expertise that demanded explanation beyond luck or favorable conditions. The qualification course concluded with Emma achieving a perfect score, placing every round within the target's highest scoring rings despite shooting with equipment that appeared more suitable for a child's birthday party than military operations. Her performance had systematically destroyed every assumption her audience had made about civilian competence and military standards. Staff Sergeant Coleman approached the firing line with his clipboard, his expression showing the kind of confusion that came from witnessing results that challenged fundamental assumptions about how the world worked. His voice carried a note of puzzlement as he announced scores that seemed almost impossible given the circumstances. "Perfect score," Coleman said, his tone suggesting he was having difficulty believing his own words. 40 out of 40 possible points, every shot within the center ring at all distances. The crowd received this announcement with stunned silence rather than the applause or ridicule they'd been prepared to offer. Emma's performance had created a cognitive dissonance that left her audience struggling to reconcile their expectations with the evidence their eyes had provided. Lieutenant Kim lowered her phone, her expression shifting from confident mockery to genuine puzzlement as she processed results that didn't fit any category she'd prepared for civilian contractors. Her military academy training had emphasized the importance of accurate assessment, but nothing in her education had prepared her for situations where appearances were this fundamentally misleading. Emma began cleaning her weapon with the same methodical attention to detail she displayed throughout the afternoon, seemingly unaware of the confusion her performance had generated among her audience. The pink rifle was disassembled and cleaned with professional efficiency, each component receiving the kind of care that suggested deep familiarity with the weapon's mechanical requirements. Corporal Thompson's stream had attracted viewers from military bases around the world as news of the extraordinary shooting demonstration spread through social media networks. His commentary had shifted from confident mockery to amazed observation, as he struggled to provide context for performance that exceeded his ability to explain. The afternoon sun was beginning to cast longer shadows across the range when Captain Torres arrived to observe what his staff had described as an unusual qualification session. Torres approached with the measured stride of an officer who'd learned to investigate anomalies personally rather than relying on second-hand reports that might be colored by bias or misunderstanding. Emma's equipment was packed away with the same care she'd used to prepare it, each component secured in its designated place within the pink rifle case that had generated so much amusement earlier in the day. Her movements suggested a level of familiarity with the weapon that went far beyond recreational shooting or basic military training. The crowd began to disperse slowly, soldiers returning to their duties with expressions that suggested they were still processing what they'd witnessed. Conversations were quieter than usual, lacking the confident commentary that had characterized their pre-shooting speculation about civilian inadequacy and military superiority. Private Rivera counted his losses from the betting pools that had seemed like guaranteed income before Emma's demonstration began. His entrepreneurial confidence had been an expensive lesson in the dangers of assumptions based on appearances rather than demonstrated capability. and he was already reconsidering his approach to future gambling opportunities. Staff Sergeant Coleman remained at the scoring table, reviewing the targets and calculations as if repeated examination might reveal errors that would restore his understanding of how civilian contractors were supposed to perform on military ranges. His 15 years of experience had provided no framework for results, this exceptional from someone with Emma's apparent background. The qualification course had been completed with perfect scores, but Emma's demonstration was far from over. What her audience didn't realize was that they'd just witnessed the warm-up exercise, a basic competency test that barely scratched the surface of capabilities that would soon save all their lives. Evening was approaching at Forward Operating Base Nightwatch, and intelligence reports were suggesting that the coming darkness might bring challenges that would test everyone's assumptions about combat readiness and civilian competence in ways nobody was prepared for. The pink rifle had passed its first test with flying colors, but the real examination was still hours away. Captain Torres studied the qualification results with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle that violated several laws of physics. His clipboard held documentation of shooting performance that belonged in the record books, achieved by a civilian contractor whose appearance suggested she'd gotten lost on her way to a suburban shopping mall. The disconnect between expectation and reality was so complete that he found himself double-checking the math, as if numbers might lie more easily than his eyes. Emma finished securing her equipment with the methodical precision that had characterized every action since her arrival. The pink rifle disappeared into its case like a secret being locked away, though its performance had already shattered every assumption about the relationship between appearance and capability that the base personnel had brought to their afternoon. Entertainment. Staff Sergeant Coleman approached Captain Torres with the hesitant manner of someone delivering news that might be interpreted as either incompetence or hallucination. His 15 years of military experience had provided frameworks for understanding most phenomena he encountered in combat zones, but civilian contractors who shot like Olympic champions fell outside his established categories. "Sir, I've reviewed the scoring 3 times, Coleman reported. "Perfect qualification, all distances, no coaching required." She handled that weapon like she'd been born with it in her hands. Torres accepted the clipboard and reviewed the documented results personally, his trained eye searching for errors. That might explain performance this exceptional from someone with Emma's apparent background. The targets told a story of precision that most professional soldiers struggle to achieve under ideal conditions, accomplished with equipment that looked like it belonged in a toy chest. Lieutenant Kim approached with her phone still recording. Though her commentary had shifted from confident mockery to confused observation, her military academy training had emphasized the importance of accurate assessment, but nothing in her education had prepared her for situations where visual evidence contradicted every logical assumption about civilian competence. "Captain, you need to see the footage," Kim said, her voice carrying a note of uncertainty that was unusual for someone accustomed to definitive judgments. "The groupings at 300 meters are tighter than anything I've seen from our best marksman. I don't understand how she's doing it with that equipment." Torres took Kim's phone and reviewed the recorded performance, watching Emma's shooting technique frame by frame in search of explanations that made sense within his understanding of marksmanship fundamentals. Her stance was textbook perfect, her breathing controlled, her trigger squeeze smooth. Every element of her technique suggested professional training that extended far beyond recreational shooting or basic civilian instruction. Corporal Thompson's live stream had attracted viewers from military installations across 3 continents as word spread through social media networks about the civilian contractor who was redefining assumptions about combat competence. His audience had grown to nearly 8,000 viewers, with comments flowing so rapidly that individual messages disappeared before they could be read completely. The base communications center had begun receiving inquiries from higher headquarters about the viral video footage that was circulating through military networks. Intelligence officers were asking questions about civilian contractor clearances, and public affairs personnel were expressing concern about operational security implications of streaming combat training activities to global audiences. Emma remained seemingly unaware of the digital storm her performance was generating. She organized her gear with the same quiet efficiency she displayed throughout the day, accepting compliments graciously but offering no explanations for abilities that exceeded every prediction her audience had made about civilian shooting competence. Private Rivera was calculating his financial losses from betting pools that had seemed like guaranteed profit before Emma's demonstration began. His entrepreneurial confidence had cost him 3 months of deployment pay, and he was developing a healthy respect for the dangers of assumptions based on appearances rather than demonstrated capability. The afternoon heat was beginning to moderate. As the sun descended toward the western ridgeline, casting longer shadows across the base compound, evening shift changes were beginning, bringing fresh personnel who hadn't witnessed Emma's qualification performance but were hearing secondhand accounts that sounded increasingly like exaggerated war stories. Sergeant First Class Chun emerged from the communication center with a radio message that carried the urgent tone reserved for developing situations. His expression suggested that administrative complications were about to be overshadowed by more immediate concerns that would test everyone's priorities in ways they weren't prepared for. "Captain, we've got movement on the eastern approaches," Chun reported. "Surveillance indicates possible hostile activity coordinating along multiple infiltration routes. Intelligence suggests a coordinated probe testing our defensive posture." Torres felt his attention shift instantly from civilian contractor anomalies to the tactical realities that govern survival in combat zones. His staff gathered around the tactical display, their focus transitioning from entertainment to the deadly serious business of defending their position against enemies who didn't care about qualification scores or social media streaming. The eastern approaches to Forward Operating Base Nightwatch followed ancient goat trails that wound through rocky terrain, providing numerous concealment opportunities for attackers who understood the landscape better than the defenders. Intelligence reports had been tracking increased activity in the region for several days, suggesting coordinated planning that indicated more than random harassment. Emma overheard the tactical discussion and approached Captain Torres with the respectful manner of someone requesting permission to contribute rather than demanding attention based on recent performance. Her demeanor suggested familiarity with military protocol that extended beyond basic civilian contractor orientation. "Captain, if you're expecting contact, I'd like to request assignment to a defensive position," Emma said. "My clearance level should cover combat support roles, and I believe I can contribute meaningfully to the base defense." Torres studied Emma with renewed interest, recognizing that her qualification performance might represent capabilities more significant than exceptional recreational shooting. Combat zones had a way of revealing hidden talents, and individuals who demonstrated unexpected competence in one area often possessed skills that proved valuable in other contexts. "Ma'am, with respect, combat operations are significantly different from range qualification," Torres replied. "We appreciate your offer, but civilian contractors aren't typically assigned to defensive positions during active engagements." Emma nodded understandingly but maintained her position near the tactical display, studying the terrain maps and defensive positions with the focused attention of someone processing tactical information rather than satisfying curiosity. Her questions about fields of fire and engagement ranges suggested familiarity with defensive planning that exceeded basic civilian knowledge. The base alarm system activated with a piercing tone that transformed routine activities into urgent preparation for contact. Soldiers abandoned their off-duty activities and moved toward assigned positions with the practiced efficiency of professionals who'd rehearsed these procedures countless times under varying conditions. Emma's response to the alarm was immediate and professional, moving toward cover while avoiding interference with military personnel responding to their assigned duties. Her situational awareness and tactical movement suggested training that extended far beyond civilian contractor orientation, though her audience was too focused on immediate threats to analyze her behavior for additional clues. Lieutenant Kim was securing her personal equipment when she noticed Emma's tactical movement patterns. The civilian contractor was positioning herself with the awareness of someone who understood cover and concealment principles, moving with purpose rather than the confusion typically displayed by non-military personnel during crisis situations. Staff Sergeant Coleman was coordinating defensive positions when he observed Emma checking her weapon with the professional efficiency of someone preparing for combat rather than seeking shelter during emergencies. Her movements suggested muscle memory developed through extensive training rather than recent instruction about emergency procedures. The Tactical Operations Center filled with reports from observation posts scattered around the base perimeter. Surveillance indicated multiple groups moving through the eastern approaches using coordinated timing that suggested professional military training rather than random insurgent activity. Intelligence estimates placed enemy strength at approximately 12 individuals organized into 3 4-man teams. Captain Torres was analyzing enemy approach routes when Emma approached with terrain observations that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of tactical advantages and defensive vulnerabilities. Her comments about dead space and enfilade positions indicated professional training that civilian contractors weren't supposed to possess. "Ma'am, how exactly do you know about enfilade fire and dead space coverage?" Torres asked, his curiosity now extending beyond shooting performance to encompass broader tactical knowledge that didn't match her official background. Emma responded with explanations about previous consulting work that had required familiarity with defensive planning principles. Her answers were technically accurate but deliberately vague, suggesting experience she wasn't authorized to discuss in detail or circumstances that exceeded her official contractor status. The first enemy contact occurred at the northeastern observation post, where Specialist Martinez reported muzzle flashes from positions approximately 800 meters from the base perimeter. The engagement was brief and inconclusive, with enemy forces withdrawing after probing defensive response capabilities rather than attempting sustained assault. Communications intercepts suggested enemy forces were coordinating their activities through sophisticated equipment that indicated professional military support rather than improvised insurgent capabilities. Intelligence analysis suggested a well-planned operation designed to test defensive weaknesses before launching coordinated attacks against multiple vulnerable points. Emma listened to tactical reports with the focused attention of someone processing information for decision-making, rather than satisfying curiosity about military operations. Her questions about enemy capabilities and defensive countermeasures suggested analytical skills that extended beyond civilian contractor requirements. The second probe occurred at the southeastern perimeter, where enemy forces tested defensive response times and coordination between observation posts. The pattern suggested systematic intelligence gathering designed to identify vulnerabilities that could be exploited during subsequent attacks when defenders might be less prepared or alert. Captain Torres was coordinating defensive preparations when Emma approached with tactical suggestions that demonstrated understanding of enemy methodology and defensive countermeasures. Her recommendations about adjusting observation post coverage and preparing for coordinated assault indicated professional experience that exceeded her documented background. "Ma'am, I'm beginning to think your qualifications extend beyond marksmanship instruction," Torres observed. "Would you care to elaborate on your previous experience with defensive operations?" Emma's response was diplomatically vague, acknowledging previous consulting work that had required familiarity with tactical planning while avoiding specific details about circumstances or locations. Her answers suggested classified background that civilian contractors weren't supposed to possess or experience that exceeded her official authorization level. The enemy's third probe targeted the southwestern approach, confirming intelligence. Assessments about coordinated planning and professional execution. The pattern of attack suggested enemy forces were gathering information systematically before launching their primary assault against positions they'd identified as most vulnerable to coordinated attack. Darkness was approaching rapidly, providing enemy forces with concealment advantages that would complicate defensive operations significantly. Night vision equipment would help, but attackers who knew the terrain possessed inherent advantages that technology couldn't completely overcome. In mountainous regions where visual identification became increasingly difficult, Emma was studying tactical displays when she made observations about probable enemy assault routes that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of terrain analysis and tactical planning. Her predictions about enemy timing and coordination suggested professional experience with similar operations in comparable environments. Staff Sergeant Coleman was positioning defensive teams when he noticed Emma's equipment preparation suggested familiarity with combat operations that extended beyond civilian contractor training. Her gear organization and weapon preparation indicated muscle memory developed through extensive field experience rather than recent orientation about emergency procedures. The base communication center received intelligence updates confirming enemy strength estimates and coordination capabilities that exceeded previous threat assessments. 12 enemy combatants organized into 3 teams were preparing coordinated assault designed to overwhelm defensive positions through simultaneous attacks against multiple vulnerable points. Lieutenant Kim was checking defensive equipment when she observed Emma's preparation routine included items that civilian contractors weren't typically authorized to possess. Her gear selection and tactical organization suggested professional background that her official documentation didn't adequately explain or authorize. Captain Torres made the decision to accept Emma's offer of combat support based on demonstrated competence and apparent experience that exceeded her documented qualifications. Extraordinary circumstances required flexibility in personnel assignments, and individuals who demonstrated unexpected capabilities deserved opportunities to contribute meaningfully to defensive operations. "Ma'am, I'm assigning you to Overwatch Position 3, Torres announced. You'll have clear fields of fire covering the eastern approaches where intelligence indicates primary enemy assault routes. Your demonstrated marksmanship suggests you can contribute meaningfully to defensive operations." Emma accepted the assignment with professional acknowledgement rather than surprise or gratitude, suggesting experience with similar responsibilities in comparable situations. Her response indicated familiarity with combat assignments that civilian contractors weren't supposed to possess, or authorization levels that exceeded her documented clearance. The Overwatch position was located in a reinforced observation tower that provided commanding views of the eastern approaches while offering protection from small arms, fire, and fragmentation effects. The position was equipped with communications equipment and backup power systems that would maintain operational capability during extended engagements. Emma climbed to her assigned position, carrying her pink rifle and additional equipment that suggested preparation for sustained combat operations. Her movement was tactical and professional, avoiding unnecessary exposure, while maintaining observation capabilities that would provide early warning of enemy approach routes. The Tactical Operations Center continued receiving reports from observation posts positioned around the base perimeter. Enemy forces were maintaining positions that allowed coordination of timing while avoiding premature engagement that might compromise surprise advantages during their planned assault. Darkness fell across Forward Operating Base Nightwatch like a tactical blanket, providing concealment for both defenders and attackers, while transforming the surrounding terrain into a maze of shadows, where movement detection became increasingly difficult despite technological advantages. Emma settled into her overwatch position with equipment arrangements that suggested experience with similar responsibilities. Her preparation included backup ammunition, communication devices, and tactical accessories that civilian contractors weren't typically authorized to possess during combat operations. The pink rifle was positioned for optimal fields of fire covering probable enemy approach routes, identified through terrain analysis and intelligence reports. Despite its ridiculous appearance, the weapon was configured for precision shooting. Under combat conditions that would test equipment capabilities and operator skills simultaneously. Intelligence reports confirmed enemy forces were beginning their final approach using coordinated timing designed to overwhelm defensive positions through simultaneous attacks against multiple vulnerable points. 12 combatants were moving through terrain that provided concealment advantages while limiting defensive observation capabilities. Emma's position provided commanding views of the primary assault routes, though darkness and terrain features would make target identification challenging even with night vision equipment. Combat engagements under these conditions required skills that extended far beyond range qualification, demanding split-second decision-making and precision shooting under extreme stress. The first enemy team was approaching through the northeastern draws, using natural concealment and coordinated movement that suggested professional military training rather than improvised insurgent tactics. Their advance was systematic and patient, indicating confidence in their planning and preparation for defensive countermeasures. Emma observed enemy movement through her scope while maintaining communication with the tactical operations center about developing situations and target identification. Her reports were professional and precise, providing information that enhanced overall defensive awareness and coordination between observation positions. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test every assumption about civilian contractor capabilities and combat effectiveness. 12 enemy combatants were approaching coordinated assault positions, unaware that their carefully planned operation was about to encounter resistance that exceeded every calculation they'd made about defensive capabilities. The pink rifle was about to demonstrate that appearances could be not just deceiving, but lethally misleading for those who made tactical decisions based on assumptions, rather than verified intelligence about enemy capabilities and defensive preparations. The first enemy combatant appeared in Emma's scope at exactly 2100 hours, moving through the northeastern ravine with the disciplined patience of professional military training. Through her night vision optics, she could observe his tactical movement patterns, weapon handling, and coordination signals that confirmed intelligence assessments about enemy capabilities and organization. Emma adjusted her position slightly, settling the pink rifle into a stable firing platform while maintaining visual contact with the approaching threat. The weapon's ridiculous appearance contrasted sharply with the deadly serious nature of the developing engagement, though its performance characteristics would soon prove that lethality had nothing to do with aesthetic choices. The Tactical Operations Center was receiving reports from multiple observation posts as enemy teams coordinated their final approach toward predetermined assault positions. Intelligence indicated 12 combatants organized into 3 4-man teams, each responsible for specific objectives designed to overwhelm defensive capabilities through simultaneous attacks against vulnerable points. Staff Sergeant Coleman was monitoring communications when Emma's voice came through the radio with professional clarity that suggested extensive experience with combat reporting procedures. Her target identification and range estimates were precise and confident, providing tactical information that enhanced overall defensive awareness and coordination. Overwatch 3 to base. I have visual on hostile Team 1, northeastern approach, range 800 meters in closing. 4 combatants. Moving in tactical formation with professional discipline. Recommend all stations maintain readiness for coordinated assault. Captain Torres acknowledged Emma's report while studying tactical displays that showed enemy positions converging on the base perimeter from multiple directions. The coordination and timing suggested sophisticated planning that required immediate and decisive defensive response to prevent successful penetration of security barriers. The second enemy team became visible through the southeastern approach, their movement patterns confirming coordinated timing designed to divide defensive attention between multiple simultaneous threats. Emma tracked their progress while maintaining primary focus on the northeastern team that posed the most immediate danger to critical defensive positions. Lieutenant Kim was coordinating defensive communications when she noticed the professional quality of Emma's tactical reports. The civilian contractor was providing information with precision and clarity that exceeded most military personnel, using terminology and procedures that suggested extensive training in combat operations. Emma's scope tracked the lead enemy combatant as his team advanced through terrain that provided concealment while approaching optimal assault positions. Her crosshairs settled on center mass while she calculated range, wind conditions, and timing, factors that would determine engagement success under combat conditions. The third enemy team appeared on the southwestern approach, completing the coordinated assault formation that confirmed intelligence assessments about enemy capabilities and tactical planning. 12 professional combatants were positioning themselves for simultaneous attacks, designed to overwhelm defensive response through superior coordination and firepower concentration. "The base, this is Overwatch 3, Emma reported with calm professionalism. All 3 enemy teams now visible and approaching final assault positions. Estimate 60 seconds until coordinated attack begins. Request permission to engage targets of opportunity." Captain Torres granted engagement authorization while coordinating defensive preparations across all positions. The base's survival depended on preventing enemy penetration of security perimeters, and every available defensive capability needed to contribute to stopping the coordinated assault before it could achieve tactical objectives. Emma's finger moved to the trigger as the first enemy combatant reached optimal engagement range. Through her scope, she could observe his tactical equipment, weapon configuration, and professional movement that confirmed these weren't random insurgents, but trained military personnel conducting sophisticated operations. The pink rifles first shot broke the evening silence with a sharp crack that echoed across the mountainous terrain. 800 meters away, the lead enemy combatant dropped instantly, his tactical advance terminated by precision marksmanship that had calculated range, environmental conditions, and target movement with mathematical accuracy. Before his teammates could react to the sudden loss of their point man, Emma's second shot eliminated the team's communication specialist, disrupting their coordination capabilities and preventing immediate notification of defensive contact to other assault teams. Her target selection demonstrated tactical understanding that exceeded recreational shooting by several orders of magnitude. The third shot struck the team's heavy weapons operator before he could deploy his equipment for suppressive fire against defensive positions. Emma's engagement sequence was methodical and professional, targeting enemy capabilities in order of priority while maintaining the rapid pace necessary to prevent effective countermeasures. Staff Sergeant Coleman was monitoring the engagement through communication reports when he realized Emma was systematically dismantling the Northeastern Assault Team with precision that belonged in military training manuals. Her target selection and engagement timing suggested professional experience that civilian contractors weren't supposed to possess. The fourth shot completed elimination of the Northeastern Team, preventing their assault on critical defensive positions while maintaining tactical surprise that would allow engagement of remaining enemy forces before they could adapt to defensive capabilities. Emma's shooting was transforming a coordinated enemy assault into a series of isolated targets. Lieutenant Kim was tracking tactical developments when she observed that Emma's engagement had neutralized 1/3 of enemy assault forces within 30 seconds of initial contact. The precision and speed of target elimination suggested training and experience that exceeded most military personnel regardless of their official specializations. Emma shifted her attention to the southeastern approach where the second enemy team was advancing toward assault positions, unaware that their coordinated plan was already compromised by defensive capabilities they hadn't anticipated during planning phases. Her scope acquired the new targets while maintaining situational awareness of overall tactical developments. The fifth shot eliminated the second team's point man as he approached final assault positions, disrupting their timing and coordination while alerting them to defensive capabilities that exceeded their intelligence assessments. Emma's engagement was transforming enemy advantages into tactical confusion that favored defensive operations. Corporal Thompson's live stream had attracted viewers from military installations worldwide, as combat footage documented marksmanship that was redefining assumptions about civilian contractor capabilities. His audience was witnessing precision shooting under combat conditions that most professional soldiers never achieved during their entire careers. The sixth shot struck the second team's demolition specialist before he could deploy explosive devices against defensive barriers. Emma's target prioritization demonstrated understanding of enemy capabilities and tactical objectives that suggested extensive experience with similar operations in comparable environments. Captain Torres was coordinating defensive operations. When he realized Emma was single-handedly neutralizing enemy assault capabilities faster than coordinated defensive fire from multiple positions typically achieved, her performance was exceeding every tactical assumption about individual marksmanship effectiveness during combat operations. The seventh shot eliminated the second team's machine gunner, preventing suppressive fire that would have enabled assault team advance against defensive positions. Emma's engagement sequence was degrading enemy capabilities systematically while maintaining rapid pace that prevented adaptation to unexpected defensive resistance. The eighth shot completed neutralization of the southeastern assault team, reducing enemy strength by 2/3 while maintaining tactical surprise that continued to favor defensive operations. Emma's shooting was transforming the carefully planned assault into defensive target practice under ideal conditions. Emma's attention shifted to the southwestern approach where the final enemy team was advancing toward assault positions, still unaware that their coordinated operation had been reduced to isolated individuals facing defensive capabilities that exceeded their planning assumptions by catastrophic margins. The ninth shot eliminated the final team's point man as he reached optimal assault range, alerting remaining enemy personnel to defensive capabilities that were systematically destroying their tactical advantages. Emma's precision was maintaining engagement tempo that prevented effective enemy response to unexpected resistance. The 10th shot struck the team's communications operator, completing disruption of enemy coordination capabilities, while isolating remaining combatants from command structure that might have provided tactical alternatives to continued assault against superior defensive positions. Staff Sergeant Coleman was monitoring tactical communications when he realized Emma had eliminated 10 enemy combatants within 90 seconds of initial engagement, achieving target elimination rates that exceeded theoretical maximums for individual marksmanship under combat conditions. Her performance was rewriting tactical manuals about individual effectiveness during defensive operations. The 11th shot eliminated the team's support weapon operator, preventing final defensive suppression that might have enabled surviving enemy personnel to withdraw with tactical intelligence about base defensive capabilities. Emma's engagement was ensuring complete neutralization of enemy assault forces. Lieutenant Kim was documenting combat footage when she observed that Emma's marksmanship had neutralized 11 of 12 enemy combatants using precision shooting. That would have been impressive under ideal range conditions, but was extraordinary under combat stress with lives depending on accuracy. The 12th and final shot eliminated the last enemy combatant as he attempted tactical withdrawal after witnessing systematic destruction of his assault teams. Emma's engagement had achieved complete neutralization of enemy forces through individual marksmanship that had transformed coordinated assault into defensive victory. The Tactical Operations Center fell silent as personnel processed combat results that exceeded every prediction about defensive capabilities and individual effectiveness. Emma had eliminated 12 professional enemy combatants with 12 precision shots, achieving perfect tactical success through marksmanship that redefined assumptions about civilian contractor abilities. Captain Torres approached Emma's position with the expression of someone who'd witnessed tactical performance that belonged in military legend rather than routine combat reports. His understanding of marksmanship capabilities had been permanently altered by witnessing precision shooting that exceeded theoretical maximums under actual combat conditions. "Ma'am, I believe we need to discuss your actual qualifications," Torres said as Emma secured her weapon with the same methodical precision she displayed throughout her deployment. "Civilian contractors don't typically achieve tactical results that exceed our best military specialists." Emma's response came with the calm professionalism that had characterized every interaction since her arrival. Colonel Emma Martinez, retired, United States Army Special Operations Command, 22 years active duty, specialized in precision marksmanship and tactical instruction. Current status: civilian contractor providing evaluation services for training programs. The revelation explained everything while simultaneously demonstrating how completely appearances could mislead tactical assessments. Emma Martinez wasn't a misplaced civilian contractor, but a retired military professional whose credentials exceeded those of everyone who'd mocked her throughout the day. Staff Sergeant Coleman felt his assumptions about military competence and civilian capabilities undergo fundamental revision as he processed information that recontextualized every interaction since Emma's arrival. His 15 years of experience had been insufficient preparation for encountering expertise that exceeded his recognition capabilities. Lieutenant Kim was reviewing combat footage that documented marksmanship performance from someone whose actual qualifications made her opinion about civilian contractors seem embarrassingly ignorant. Her military academy education had emphasized accurate assessment, but she'd failed to recognize exceptional competence when it appeared in unexpected packaging. Corporal Thompson's livestream had documented tactical performance that was already becoming legendary throughout military social media networks. His audience had witnessed combat effectiveness that would influence training discussions and tactical planning for years to come, though most viewers were still struggling to process what they'd observed. Private Rivera was calculating how much money he'd lost betting against someone whose actual qualifications would have made successful wagering impossible if he'd possessed accurate information about her background and capabilities. His entrepreneurial confidence had been expensive education about assumption-based decision-making. Emma packed her pink rifle with the same care she'd used throughout her deployment, the weapon's ridiculous appearance now revealed as deliberate choice rather than evidence of incompetence. Her equipment selection had been tactical deception that tested assumptions while providing tactical advantages that enemy forces hadn't anticipated. Captain Torres was preparing combat reports that would require extensive explanation about how retired Special Operations personnel had appeared at Forward Operating Base Nightwatch disguised as civilian contractors with toy weapons. The administrative complications would persist long after tactical advantages had been secured. The base communication center was receiving inquiries from higher headquarters about combat footage that was circulating through military networks worldwide. Intelligence officers were requesting information about marksmanship performance that exceeded established parameters for individual effectiveness during defensive operations. Emma's deployment had achieved its intended objectives through methods that exceeded everyone's expectations about evaluation procedures and tactical assessment. Her performance had provided valuable lessons about assumption-based judgments while demonstrating combat capabilities that had saved every life on the base. The pink rifle had completed its mission with perfect tactical success, proving that effectiveness had nothing to do with appearance and everything to do with operator competence. Emma Martinez had used deliberate deception about her capabilities to test assumptions while providing genuine tactical advantages when combat situations demanded exceptional performance. Forward Operating Base Nightwatch returned to routine operations with personnel who'd received permanent education about the dangers of judging capabilities based on appearances rather than demonstrated performance. Emma's deployment had provided tactical success and valuable lessons that would influence future assessments of personnel and equipment. The combat engagement had lasted less than 5 minutes, but its lessons would influence military thinking for years to come. 12 enemy combatants had been eliminated by 12 precision shots from a weapon that looked like a child's toy, operated by someone whose appearance had generated nothing but mockery until her true capabilities were revealed through tactical necessity. Emma Martinez had demonstrated that assumptions about competence based on visual assessment could be not just wrong, but catastrophically misleading when lives depended on accurate judgment. Her pink rifle had saved the base through marksmanship that redefined excellence while teaching lessons about respect, competence, and the dangers of superficial evaluation. The mountains around Forward Operating Base Nightwatch returned to their ancient silence, having witnessed another chapter in the endless story of combat, where appearances deceived and capabilities surprised those who thought they understood. The relationship between packaging and performance. Emma's mission was complete, her lessons delivered, and her legend secured. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.